Good afternoon. Welcome to Optimum Solutions webinar, Secrets to Retaining and Developing Your Employees Successfully. My name is Susan Warren, and this afternoon we're very pleased to host this webinar with our partner Deltek. And from Deltek this afternoon, your presenter is going to be Vincent Fabello. He's a talent management solutions engineer at Deltek. He's been there for close to 5 years. Vincent has a background in software development. As a solutions engineer, he gets to use that skill set while engaging with clients to see how the software best fits their needs. And Vincent, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you for our presentation this afternoon. Welcome, Vincent.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much for that, Susan. And you can hear me all right, yes?
Yes.
All right. Hello, everyone. Like Susan said, my name is Vincent Fabello, and as a solution engineer at Deltek, I really get the opportunity to listen to clients in terms of what they're looking for in their talent management strategy, where they're coming from, as well as what they're looking to do to improve in that area of human capital management in terms of best practices so that they can be more successful. So I'm really excited to partner with Optimum today in terms of sharing some of the best practices that we've seen, that our clients have seen. So whether you're looking to retain your employees, find good quality hires as you're onboarding them, or figure out what kind of performance review is going to work best for your organization, or if you're looking for a learning program and looking to put one in place. I want to cover a lot of those topics here today and share what information we've found, and as well as how technology can help you build a successful human capital management strategy. So as a first stop, I wanted to kind of lay out some of the areas that we're going to be looking at in terms of when we say talent management strategy, human capital management. What are some of the broad strokes that we're looking at in terms of what we're covering? So certainly, as a first stop, being able to identify within your talent pool, within your organization, who potentially your leaders are, who can maybe step up to that position or be moved up into that position. And certainly when I'm saying a leader, I'm not just talking about, an executive position, a management position, but also some of those key areas of your expertise. This may be an individual contributor, getting someone to an expertise level, etc., as well as making sure that we continue to nurture and foster employee engagement. Making sure that as you understand your company culture, see how your employees are engaged, involved, dedicated, not involved, etc., with your practices, so that you can foster a good culture of employee engagement. Just as a quick side note, engagement in terms of working through things, working with the organization, as well as your recruiting and onboarding practices. So in terms of how you can find that right fit for open positions, for areas where you have growth, both in that hiring practice and how you can improve that in a timely manner without raising costs, as well as reducing that time to hire, as well as reducing that time for them to be productive and engaged in the organization as you bring them on board. And that certainly falls hand in hand with that aspect of learning and development. So certainly training employees. Most people think in terms of, say, a certification they need for their job or annual compliance, but this is really about growing your organization at that individual level in terms of how they can contribute both to the organization, how they can stay engaged in terms of adding towards their career as well as your company. So we'll be looking at those broad strokes, as well as towards the end talk about how some aspects of technology can help you through that and make that more efficient. So just a couple of stats and a couple of figures to kind of frame the discussion. So when we look at a survey from HR.com, as well as some of the surveys that Deltek Talent has done, less than half of the respondents to the survey said they had a talent management strategy at all. And 29% said that while they had a strategy, it wasn't working well. And as well as a third of the respondents said that they would like to introduce a strategy within the next 2 years. So kind of stepping back and what kind of picture is this painting? So we've got a lot of organizations without a strategy, without anything in place. We've got organizations that say that, yeah, they do, but it's not, they don't feel it's really effective. So this is really suggesting an environment where that strategy of how an employee can grow, how an organization can develop and grow from within, promote from within, is really lacking. So we may be looking at a situation where key staff, key players in the organization may be looking to other areas where they can grow, where they can be nurtured, where they can advance. Overall, this also leads to potentially having to scramble to fill vacancies in their talent pool or replacing key positions. So this is definitely not a picture that we want to continue to move forward with, not a place our clients really want to be. So how can we combat that? How can we create a strategy to make sure that we're addressing these from an organizational level? So let's talk about that. So putting together a strategy means making sure that you're looking at it from the long perspective in terms of not only how you can hire quickly to make sure you're getting people in the door quickly, to make sure you're not losing qualified candidates, but then also in terms of for those people you've hired, as well as for the people that are currently part of your organization. What do they need? Not just to be successful currently, but moving forward in terms of their future positions, your future engagements, your future projects, as well as in terms of keeping them motivated, keeping them engaged. What do they need to feel fulfilled, respected, as well as attended to within the organization? This is all rolls into aspects like career paths, learning, and development that we'll be looking at shortly. So kind of focusing in first on that aspect of what does that hiring and onboarding process look like? And for those of you that maybe haven't done it in a while, looking at that, taking a look at that pipeline from posting resumes, interviews, all the way to choosing that hire, getting them on board, trained, and when their end goal of being productive in that particular position, we see with our clients a lot of potential slack, a lot of areas where there can be improvements in terms of that process, in terms of the tools that you give your hiring managers, you give your recruiters to help enable them to share information quickly during that hiring process, to share information in terms of scheduling, etc. There's definitely areas in that first part that we'll be talking about, as well as we look at getting them on board. Don't leave it just up to the manager. Don't leave it just up to what's been done previously. Giving her tools in terms of getting employees up to speed more quickly. All right. Moving up to the next slide. So just also a couple of cautions in terms of, if we don't hire quickly, what are some of those aspects that can happen when you hire slowly? Certainly with some of our clients, if they don't grab that engineer, if they don't grab that programmer, if they don't grab that accountant quickly enough, they may lose them to the competition. As well as if they have positions that are left unfilled, or if they can't staff and ramp up quickly enough after being awarded a contract, we may be talking about lost revenue. And also, speaking from experience here, if there's not enough manpower on that team to share that workload, to help keep that work-life balance, you may be looking at overworked staff that might be looking at burnout and might be looking at other opportunities. And certainly, we all want to be conscious of making sure that we encourage a good work-life balance, that we encourage looking at using resources appropriately, as well as making sure that salaries are competitive so that the employee is kept happy and engaged. And also, you don't want performance to be affected because of staffing shortages. So the other side of that coin, certainly in terms of speeding up recruiting, making sure that we're not losing out in terms of either productivity from our employees as they're going through that interview process, but also losing productivity because there's not enough staff to deal with that project, as well as just that Hiring process. Hiring managers. Managers are the main part of that label there, in terms of they've got aspects of their jobs that they need to do, as well as they may be contributors as well. So less administrative time, less burden in terms of that hiring process, better, the more they can be productive, as well as being able to be more responsive to your candidates, as well as on the recruiter side, more responsive to the hiring managers when she says that she needs 2 more headcounts and half approval, as well as reducing that time for a candidate to change their mind so that they make that right choice and join your organization. So anything we can do to make that a better process overall is what we're looking for. So in terms of making recruiting smarter, one of the first things that we certainly see is making sure that that definition, what you're looking for, is very clearly articulated, and that this is something you're screening for. A lot of our clients, especially those that are coming from either a paper process of dealing with resumes, or they're being taken in through an email inbox, they find a lot of value at being able to have those requirements, being able to ask certain screening questions, so that the people that they get in that initial bucket, they know that at the very least they're minimally qualified for this job, that they actually have the appropriate credentials, the appropriate experience, and that as a recruiter, it's more likely that they're looking at people who they want to move forward with, that they want to send over to a hiring manager or for a team lead, project manager, etc., so that everyone in this pipeline is wasting less time by looking at someone who's just robo-applied or who's completely unqualified for the position. They don't have the number of years of experience. Certainly, also don't forget about that aspect of networking, not just making sure that jobs are on the right job boards, but also making sure that not only you, but also the people in that position, your current employees, are appropriately reaching out to their network, reaching out to their alumni network, social circles, etc., so that they're pulling in people that they know would be qualified for this position. And as part of this, making sure that that job posting, this is something that's easily shared, that you've got a good either shortened URL, or it's easy to find on your website, so that as they're networking, as they're sharing, this is something that they can easily move back and forth, as well as bring resumes in. As well as these next few points in terms of really, once you've found the good candidates you want to look at, work more deeply with them and more quickly with them. You don't necessarily need to spend time in terms of doing, say, reference checks for everyone at the front. Maybe only the reference checks for the people that you really want to move to that next step with. And this really goes back into, as you're defining that requisition, as you're defining those requirements, also to find out what that process is. Is this a position that you're looking to have multiple interviews with, or is this perhaps a more beginning position, more young in your career position, where you may only have the team lead interviewed with? Make sure that you really define out that process, so that you can quickly move through that process. You can quickly move to the process of making out an offer. Because certainly when you see a great fit, you really want to be able to move on that fit in terms of making sure they get in front of the right people, making sure that once that hire decision has been made, you can quickly go through the next steps in terms of getting them on board. All right. So one of the next focuses I want to talk about is actually evaluating that person and growing that person. And certainly when I started, and with in terms of my professional career, that yearly appraisal, that yearly set of company competencies, goals that tied to the organization, that tied to an individual, that was really the main focus, and really the main way that we had to evaluate performance. Certainly that is a part of many organizations, but we're certainly going to look at some of the other options that you need to take into account, as well as some of the options that you have that maybe capture not only feedback, but then react to that in terms of growing your employees. So looking at this, during one of our other webinars, Making the Move to Performance-Based Appraisals, some of our attendees in a poll provided some very insightful feedback on what they liked about their current process, what they didn't like, whether or not they believe the process is fair. So, just giving you a few seconds to take some of that in, and I certainly can echo those sentiments throughout the process. So one of the things that we see with organizations is that they've certainly looked at trimming down. I kid you not. Well, I've once dealt with an appraisal that from one of our clients that had 30 plus competencies. So trimming down from an overly heavy administrative-wise performance review, trimming down the number of competencies and goals, and really focusing in on those one or two things that they want that job role, that they want that department, or that individual to really focus on in terms of going through an annual performance cycle. So they're focusing on fewer core competencies, fewer goals that are more important to that particular individual, and so that appraisal is really focused on how they can grow, as well as then focus on how the manager, how she can help that employee in terms of growing in that particular either competency or a goal that they've set up. One of the other things that we've seen is really focusing in on the conversations. So certainly a number of clients have been encouraging more frequent discussions between their employees and managers, capturing that feedback and really using it as another way to engage and develop their employees. So not just being diagnostic at the end of the year, noticing that there's a gap in communication, but actually working towards building that communication as they notice it throughout the year. So one of the things they've looked at is doing more continuous feedback. So instead of, or in addition to that annual review, we see clients encouraging managers and employees to have more regular feedback sessions. These could be one-on-one meetings that happen every week, perhaps something that's scheduled every quarter to discuss where they are overall. This could be a performance discussion, a goal discussion, but focused more around conversations of developing the employee, as well as what the employee's goals are and how they're progressing towards them, as well as giving the manager and the employee the opportunity to collaborate on how they can develop towards their goals. So certainly, we're looking at ways to capture this information. We'll see how we can use different tools to capture and document that kind of performance throughout the year, as well as give them opportunities to add that information in ad hoc, so it's not just one specific time of year. It's not just the end of year. All right. So certainly lots of bullet points and a little quick slide cartoon to move us into training and development. So this really kind of focuses in on that question that sometimes comes up with regard to what's that ROI on training or this particular development process. So just turning it on its head in terms of training is as much a part of the organization's strategy in terms of achieving business goals, in terms of achieving where the organization wants to go. Because your people are the ones that will be driving that, implementing that, so you want to make sure that they're equipped to make sure to achieve those goals. So let's take a step back in terms of framing some of those aspects of training. Certainly if I'm talking about training and development, things that come top of mind, making sure that we're doing our yearly compliance and procedure certification, or perhaps there are certifications necessary for certain job roles or to be on, say, a shop floor. Absolutely. Also, training towards, say, a career growth or an individual's goals, also things that come to the top of my mind. But also, training is really important in terms of looking at growth, looking at being able to handle things that come up. And by that, I mean making sure that for your key positions, and once again, not just leadership positions, but also at your expertise positions, those areas that really support your business, certain engineering positions, or even shop manager floors, making sure that you would be able to handle enough growth so that if you're opening a new location, you've got a strong enough bench to pull from. Or if life happens and someone moves to another state, you're going to be able to handle that growth and be able to replace them. But this is also where we can start pulling in that individual growth that we started talking about with regards to performance. So those areas where the manager in their regular conversations, they notice where an employee is weaker in communications, and perhaps that's something they've discussed as a goal the employee wants to work on. What are some of the tools that you as an organization can provide to that manager to help grow her employee? What are some of the areas where you can keep that employee engaged in terms of either learning in-house or learning from a different resource you provided? And certainly in terms of different types, this has taken the form of really formal strategies. Some of our clients have gone all the way to have internal universities built up, internal manager certifications, or internal engineering training places. But we've also seen the gambit all the way to the other end of the spectrum of just providing tools in terms of if a manager wants to help their employees grow for communication, if they want to help in certain area, here are some tools, here's some specific library resources. So looking at that, certainly in terms of building your internal resources and sharing experiences, like I said, we've seen some clients go all the way to an internal university, but it doesn't have to go that far. Even things as simple and as low overhead as a lunch and learn, where your experts are sharing their experience, or they're sharing a particularly interesting client and just talking about it. There's nothing quite like filling that adage of see one, do one, teach one, i.e. sharing those experiences, those lessons learned, that not only strengthens those lessons learned for the person presenting, but also disseminates that throughout the organization. Like we've talked about how these are growth opportunities with that manager and employee. And when I say building a library, building expertise, this could take many forms. This could be just a knowledge base, document store where you're starting to keep some of this information. It doesn't have to be as formalized, but just starting to build that expertise, build that internal knowledge base, even if it's as informal as knowing that, yeah, if you need to help with PowerPoint, with Microsoft Word, this particular shop tool, Maureen's the one to go to. And also these then go into when you're thinking towards mapping out those career paths for an employee. How do they get to be one of the supervisors? How do they get to be one of the lead engineers? How do they get to be one of the lead designers? What are some of those aspects in terms of individual training, in terms of training that you as an organization believe is important, as well as making sure that the people who take over positions, those key positions that we talked about, are ready? Those are different aspects of training. So this is where we can start talking about how technology and how processes can really help you speed that process up, and also how you can leverage that in terms of working towards better processes. So certainly some of those aspects can be found in a unified solution. So all those aspects of learning, training, development, recruiting, if all of those were within that the same organization, within the same tool, you'd really be able to leverage those different parts of data and really be able to break down some of the information silos. So, as an example, if you've got data from where your hires come from, if you've got data in terms of which people perform well, which people need certain types of training, being able to have all of that data together so that you can report across it would really empower you as an organization, would really empower you in terms of knowing where you need to focus your recruiting efforts on in terms of fulfilling those roles, as well as be able to let HR be more strategic in terms of the business. So being able to enable the HR strategy to really respond to if an organization wants to grow either in a certain geographic area, a certain business area, where can we recruit from, where can we grow internally, or where do we need to reach outside, reach to different expertises in terms of recruiting, as well as, like we said, those different aspects of data, being able to report across all of that data in one central area, and certainly not to ever be belittled, but in terms of compliance, in terms of strategy, being able to have all those metrics in one place, compliance reports, etc. So looking at some of the tools that the Delta Talent Management offers, so certainly in terms of recruiting, these are some of the aspects that our recruiting tool helps with. So in terms of that applicant tracking and being able to really share that information about a position, define that out clearly, share that out quickly, as well as track that process, track your client's internal process, as well as being able to move on them quickly in terms of getting an offer out there. Those are some of the things that tools such as the applicant tracking can really help with, as well as, of course, dealing with those compliance reports that any organization over 50 employees starts having to do in terms of recruiting processes, as well as being able to move and share that information quickly, say with your HRIS system. Also in terms of performance, certainly not only do we assist with those annual appraisals, something that's built off of core competencies, job competencies, individual and group goals, but also in terms of being able to track that continuous feedback, giving employees and managers an area for them to enter that in, as well as that visibility and accountability of it being seen throughout the organization in terms of how people are progressing for their appraisals, and of course, who's late on that appraisal. In terms of development, we certainly can provide tools in terms of building out what a career path looks like in terms of progressing from point A to point B, as well as in terms of, as you take a look at each rung of that ladder, how does that employee do against the benchmark of that position? Where are their gaps? And then building on that in terms of building a development plan, building concrete exercises and learning materials, learning classes from their learning system in terms of addressing those gaps and growing them towards that particular career path. And certainly, when we're talking about learning, being able to track all of your learning assets. And like I said, this could be as complex as an internal university, or it could be making sure that people know what lunch and learns you're offering, what internal workshops in terms of sharing different experiences, so that an employee is empowered to be able to search for that information. Managers are also empowered in terms of being able to look at what courses, what lunch and learns are being offered to address those gap areas, but also being able to track that information, having that in one central place, not someone's Excel spreadsheet, not lost on someone's desk. Who is certified for certain positions? Who is certified to do work that we're looking for, that we're bidding on? As well as for those certifications, do we need to make sure that someone is on task in terms of their CE credits or recertifying, or who's coming up for a recertification? All of that training history, all of that certification history tracked in one place. And all of this is all part of one solution in terms of being able to see that information in one place, either from an HR perspective, a manager perspective, but also in terms of running those reports, running those analytics, finding out where are we getting the best candidates from, how are they performing, as well as being able to report across all of our learning. So as you're looking towards your talent strategy, you know, some of the next steps that I can definitely recommend is you kick off this process and start to look at a couple of aspects of this strategy. Who are the top people you're worried about losing? What can you do to make sure that you don't lose them in terms of what aspects of training do you need to look at? What aspects of engagement in terms of what they're looking for, what their goals are? So certainly this is a conversation not just between a core team, but also the managers on the ground, as well as in terms of facilitating your staff development, growing your development, how can you engage your managers? What are the tools that they're looking for, or what are the tools that you know that you can provide them? From there, you can continue to develop that strategy. This is something certainly that grows over time. So looking at that's why I said looking at your key employees to make sure that you are nurturing and tending to them, but also a focus of looking at your key positions, key strategies, so that you're starting at a place that will really help the organization strategically, as well as help in terms of your strategic goals. And as part of this, looking at your current processes and seeing where there could be potentially some leverage either from technology, from update of those processes in terms of updating tools, or even giving a tool to your team, making sure that they're able to quickly move through that process. And here I'm certainly thinking about all our clients moving off of Excel spreadsheets, Excel files, paper files, email threads back and forth. Those are definitely areas where once a client starts looking at process improvements, moving off of spreadsheets into a tool that can help them track and share that information, they're seeing lots of return on investment. So hopefully this brief presentation has helped you in terms of giving you some food for thought in terms of working through that talent management strategy, looking at your organization and looking at your people in a different way, and also in terms of how Optimum and Deltek can help you in terms of speeding up that process and also tending to your people. So certainly if you have any questions in terms of how Optimum and Deltek can help you, reach out to your Optimum sales rep and let us know how we can help you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. That's been great information. And like Vincent said, if anybody has any questions about making recruiting smarter or strengthening your performance review process, capturing feedback regularly, or improving your return on investment when it comes to training, whether that's from a simple lunch and learn or going so far as to creating an internal university, that sounds really sophisticated, or just leveraging technology to improve your talent management process. The team between Deltek and Optimum is here to help you, so you can, as Vincent said, reach out to your Optimum Solutions sales rep with anything that you'd like to investigate further. Anybody have any questions, you can type those in the questions area of the panel there on the GoToWebinar panel. We don't have any questions at this point. If you do have any questions, you can certainly email them to me at swarren@optimumhris.com, and I will get those over to Vincent, and we can certainly email you any answers. But we want to thank everybody for attending this afternoon, and we want to thank Deltek for partnering with us with this webinar. Great information, Vincent. Thanks, everybody. Have an optimum day. We will post this recorded webinar on our website very shortly. Thank you.